Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. We're all familiar with the words of James 1, verses 2 through 4. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. But what does that have to do with the story of a dog named Benji? Joe Camp, author, creator, producer, and director of the beloved dog Benji, knows this passage all too well. It would have been much easier if he knew this when he embarked on this project that has now touched hundreds of millions of lives. But that was not God's plan. Against insurmountable rejection, Joe Camp questioned why God would allow one trial after another to block his path. Could Joe trust God when man rejected him at every turn? It wasn't until Joe came to his own understanding of the magnificent grace and mercy, even in the trials, that he found out that he could trust God with a secret, and that God's plans were so much bigger than Joe's plans. Joe Camp, film writer, producer, director, author, passionate speaker, and the man behind the canine superstar Benji, believes that anything is possible if you work hard enough and trust in yourself. He was told by industry experts not to bother with the original Benji films, that it wouldn't work. He proved the experts wrong, and now, after 5 Benji movies, he's at it again with his best-selling books that are turning the traditional thinking about horses on its head. The Soul of a Horse, Life Lessons from the Herd, is a national bestseller in its 17th printing. Its sequel, Born Wild, is an Amazon #1 bestseller and was a #1 hot new release. Joining us now to chronicle the story of Benji is the author of God Only Knows, Can You Trust Him with Your Secret? Joe Camp. Joe, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's great to be here.
Well, Joe, it's an honor to meet you, the creator of Benji, the story of a dog that touched the lives of so many, kind of for a number of generations, kind of put Lassie in the background. And Benji became the icon of great adventure and loving stories, and captured the hearts of so many. But the man behind Benji was going through his own challenges, his own struggles, his own questions, and his own personal journey. And that's where we want to start our conversation, is a particular quote that I took from your book as I read it, that when you were asked, did you believe in God and did you believe in the Bible, your response was, as well, I believe in the essence of it. So let's go back to your journey with this God that you thought was turning his back on you, but yet was the greatest director, the greatest producer, and the greatest author of all time. Where did it begin for you, Joe?
Well, let's say that I knew what I wanted to do with my life when I was 8 years old, sitting in a theater in Little Rock, Arkansas, watching Disney's characters dance happily off the stage. And I knew that I wanted to be the person making me feel as happy as I did. I was 34 before I was doing it. And I was working at it from the time I was 8 till I was 34. And God was right in the middle of it. And so it was a real journey. And so, I mean, I was always a Christian because I was told I was supposed to be as a kid. And growing up through it, God was there. I never questioned the fact that God was there. I have some issues with some of the quotes in the Bible as to being, are they literally God's words on the page? And I'm a writer, and I understand what writers do to try to spiff things up a little bit, and so I have a natural proclivity for doing this sort of thing. But as we went along, and as it became clear that God was involved in this thing, and that He was teaching me lesson by lesson by lesson what I was going to need to coals really hit the fan, and that happened about halfway through the journey, and sent me home, pulling out the Bible, dusting it off, and going back to school because we had a really close friend. This was before Benji, and we were trying to break into television writing in Hollywood. And we were living in Dallas, but we wanted to write for television. And a fellow by the name of Jerry Van Dyke, who was Dick Van Dyke's brother, and was a comedian and was on his show several times and had several shows of his own prior to this incident, came to town to do his nightclub act. And he happened to be in town at the same time that one of my writing partners, his name was Erwin Hearn, and he was a member of the First Baptist in Dallas, which was at that time, I think, the biggest Baptist church in the country. And they had Vonda K. Van Dyke, who was Miss America at the moment, in town to talk to the kids, the youth of the church. And Erwin said to me, he said, wouldn't it be great if we could get Jerry Van Dyke to go be with Vonda K. Van Dyke and have two bands? What a great promotional thing it'd be. And I just crawled all over. I was so upset. I said, he's being good enough to see us. We're going to get to sit in his room, ask him all the questions that we want to ask him. Let's don't mess the whole thing up by saying, hey, go to church with Erwin and meet Vonda K. Van Dyke. And so Erwin said, okay, fine. All right. And so we went through the entire, I don't know, it was about 30 minutes, and began to run out of juice because he wasn't a writer. He was a comedian. He had one show that had been taken off the air, and the reason being that all of the producers and writers had never seen, none of the producers and writers had ever seen Jerry work, which didn't make any sense to me, but nonetheless, that show was gone. And so he was helpful. He wanted to be helpful to us. But when we wanted to get around to writing and what makes one better than the other, et cetera, there wasn't a lot of conversation going on. So we thank him for his time and pack up. And we're standing at the door of his hotel room. And Erwin is there, and one other guy is there. And Erwin stops cold in his tracks and says, Jerry, I got to tell you this story. Joe's going to kill me, but I got to tell you because I think it's funny. And he told him the story about coming to me to say, let's ask him to go be with Vonda K. Van Dyke. And I'm sitting there saying, oh my God, now what? And Jerry laughed at it. He said, I would have been happy to do it. It conflicts with the time that I have to be on the show here in the hotel. But I would have been happy to go there and do that. That'd been great. And so as we were grading out the door, he said, y'all wait a minute. He said, you got 10 more minutes? And we walked back in the room, and he sat us down and told us about a series that he and his brother, Dick, had come up with, a situation comedy about a minister who's not married, young, right out of school, in his first church, and it happens to be a church that is predominantly the older geezers. Me and you. And my heart is just going crazy because he's telling us about a show that they want to do. It turns out there's no script written on, and hasn't been, and not prepared, to try to raise enough money to start getting scripts written, and they're still talking about it and trying to flesh it out. But his interest now was, I'm going to be in town for 2 weeks. Can you get me over to the Southern Baptist Convention and meet some of those people? And because we're worried that the Baptists in the South are not going to like minister in comedy. And of course, Erwin was going crazy. He thought it was great. And he took him over to the Southern Baptist Convention, took him down to meet the pastor of the First Baptist, and everybody loved the idea. And it was all about the this minister was fresh out of school, and he had young and new ideas, and so there's conflict going on all the time. And so I asked him at one point, I said, has anything been written on it? And he said, no. He walked over to the we don't have money to pay for it. We can't do it on spec because the guilds won't allow that. And he started drawing circles in the fog that was on the window. And he says, but if the screenplay happened to land on my front porch and happened to be something that I liked, I would make sure that my brother gets to see it and Carl Reiner gets to see it. He starts naming off all these comedy greats, and I'm just, my heart's just going crazy. And so we spent a lot of time with him during that 2 weeks, and Erwin even invited him to church on last Sunday that he was there. And so my wife and I went down, and we all gathered and went in for the service and so forth. And he was pretty excited about what he was hearing from the most, I don't know what the word is, conservative maybe, of the denominations that he knew of, loving this, the people that love the concept. And so when he left, we went immediately to work to write a spec script for him. When we walked out the door that day, after Erwin had told Jerry about Von Decay, and it had turned the whole meeting around, brought us back into the room to talk about something, and to really, with his blessing, write a speculative script for a pilot, that show. And I was just going berserk. It was like God dropped down into that room, slapped me around a little bit, and said, I've worked really hard to get this put together for you. Will you shut up and let this guy talk? And that was the time that I went home that night, pulled out the Bible out of the shelf, dusted it off, and I read the entire thing. I've forgotten now. I'll exaggerate it if I try to tell you what it was, but it was a very short period of time, and then went back over it again a little later. And so that was the beginning of me paying attention, I guess is the best way to put it. And Benji was as yet not even an idea at this point. We were trying to break into Hollywood. God had already told me, no, to Hollywood, because I had applied 2 years into college. I had applied to transfer to UCLA. UCLA is where films are made, and it's the best school in the country. You could say arguably, I say it is, because it's the most commercial. It's the one who really gets to the heart of what the whole business is about. And I was turned down because of one slightly bad semester in my sophomore year, and I was 0.3 of a grade point lower than their out-of-state marking. Or at least that's what they told me. But what I didn't realize at the time, it took quite a while to realize, that there was no way that he wanted me in Hollywood. He didn't want me out there homogenized business as it sits today, because Benji would have never gotten made if I had gone out there and become a mainstreamer in the business after going to school. And time after time after time, he would send us out to California for a good lesson, and then send us back. And it always ended. I mean, we got to a point to where he had, over time, maybe 4 different occasions where we had a script, and they loved it. They said, if this show's picked up, or if that happens, or whatever, you're going to be on the air, you're going to have credits, and everything's going to be great. You'll be on your way. And right at the last minute, boom, some brick would fall on it, and it would go away. And one of those happened to be one of the best writers in the town. I didn't know that at the time, but as I followed him thereafter, he was. His name was Danny Arnold. He was one of the best writers, and he started off telling. The very first thing he ever said to us when he sat us down on the couch in his office was, "I love the way you write. I love the way you capture the characters. Your story structure sucks." And that was our introduction to Danny Arnold. But I want you to do something. We're gonna try to put a story together and see where it goes. And so we were in town for a week, and through that week, I learned more about writing and emotion. His very first thing was, you don't write comedy right out of the chute. You write a good story. And then you go back and put the comedy into it. Make the story structure work. Make the emotion be tied into the character who is losing everything, and making them care enough about it so that then when you put the comedy into it, it really works. And so when I went home, I didn't know it at the time because there was no binging, but looking back over it, I think he probably had as much to do with the way that story was written as anybody on the planet, keeping God off the planet because he knew what was going on.
So here you were in the presence of great writers, people who are well connected, and you got right up to the edge a number of times where you could actually see the promise, and then you were pulled back from it. Was that a time of frustration for you? You had reached for the Bible before. Did you find any comfort in this period of time in the scriptures? Or was this something where you were seeing dreams that you had from the time you were 8 years old, just getting glimpses of them, almost being teased by them, and then winding up coming back frustrated because they didn't come to fruition?
Right. And this was, like I said, it was slow building over time. But yes, all of that was true, but it was true in a way of enlightenment for me, saying, wait a minute. I got something out of this, and I got something out of this. And at some point, I began to realize that this is what was going on. God was in there slapping me around and saying, no, 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 until we get down to here, because this one is really going to be important. And I've laid out a lot of work for that. And in that period, coming out of the Jerry Van Dyke story I told you, I began to notice, I began to pay attention to what was going on. And we always had, and this was mostly God's fault, but we were focused on it as well, projects overlapping. We were working on this thing for Jerry Van Dyke. Somewhere in the process or the ending part of that, some other opportunity came up. And so we were overlapping that with this. And when this one fell out, then we had, we got this one, and it's going really well. And that something would overlap that. And I don't think there was any time in the process that he left us totally out there to dry and saying, okay, now what are you going to do? Because we always had something to do, and what we had to do was building us, strengthening us, giving us the tools that we were going to need when it was really important. When we had a movie out there that everybody in Hollywood was going to turn down after it was made. And that's when it really became the real deal. Is when I say often that the two most devastating times I had through this process was getting told no at UCLA and getting told no in Hollywood. Once the Benji movie was made, It was a good movie. It was screened, and people loved it. We took it out there, and every studio in town turned it down. And a year and a half after that, that movie became the ¡3 box office gross of the summer for the entire summer in the United States. And all those people that turned it down had no part in making it so. God left it in my hands and said, so what you going to do? You got you trained well, kept you at Ole Miss learning advertising and marketing because you're going to need it when they turn down your picture. And you need to get it together, and that's ultimately what we did. We who knew nothing about making movies in the first place and had made one that was so good that everybody in Hollywood turned it down, now had to either throw it in the trash or figure it out. And so we went to work figuring it out, and we formed our own distribution company there in Dallas to distribute the picture worldwide, and twice as long or more than that probably most distribution companies take with their picture, because we only had one. In Hollywood, we were told many times that if Hollywood had distributed that movie, nobody would have ever heard it. It would take somebody who really cared about it and who cared enough to go the distance with it, and one of the distributors in Hollywood.
So the Benji,
I think
the Benji brand became a brand, and the first Benji, after many no's, wound up being #3 picture of the year and proved all of the experts wrong. You went on to create additional Benji movies that were successful as well. Then you came to a point where you had what you thought was maybe your best Benji picture yet. What happened with that?
that was, you have to be talking about Benji off the leash. That was one picture that I was certain God was behind. He wanted it made. There were things happening all the way through the making of that movie that not only needed to be made, it had to be good. It had to be where we could shoot it well with good people and good composers and so forth and so on. And it turned out really well. It's got some of the best reviews of any Benji movie. And we just got hammered. It's a long story I won't bore you with about Disney and Finding Nemo. But Disney just uncorked the fact that there were way more DVD machines out there in people's homes than experts had guessed that there were. And so they changed the pattern of summer distribution by going directly from summer into DVD for that same Christmas. And it worked so well. They made so much money off of the DVD exploitation of that movie that everybody in Hollywood then said, oh, we got to do that too. And so early January, there were 14 pictures scheduled to open during the summer of 2004. And by the time we opened Benji in 2004, there was something on the order of about 47 pictures that had been going to be released during the 3 months of summer, because everybody wanted to do that setup and then go to DVD. Christmas could have cut the time span way down, and they got the money flowing a lot quicker if it worked. And so that wound up murdering us, because Disney had spent $50 million on the DVD release of Finding Nemo, just on the DVD side of it. And like I say, they earned more revenue off the DVD than they did off the theatrical. It was a big hit theatrical. And so everybody was going for a piece of that, and we just got buried. We had nominal promotional budget, and we were going a little different way than we had with the original movie. And there were more people from Hollywood involved in it. What do I say about that now? Well, I think we would have done better on our own. Didn't have any help from Hollywood. But not being the case, it did very poorly. And it was three of the Benji movies in the top 10 gross of all grosses for the year of release. And this one was probably not even bottom 10. And
yet the most valuable lesson of your life came from one of the greatest devastations of your life.
That's right. That's right. And it is, when that movie opened, oddly enough, I had the week after it opened, Friday after it opened on Friday, I had an interview with Hank Hanegraaff, whose offices and studios were about 20 miles from where we lived in California at the time. So it was an easy drive, and I put Benji in the car and took her along for the ride. But I had the grosses for that first week as I made that trip, and I didn't want to go in. I did not interview. I really did not want to do, because my heart wasn't in it. I was just devastated at the numbers we were not generated out there in the box office world. And when I went in, Benji, everybody loves Benji, and came around and wanted to pet Benji and so forth. And Hank finally came out, and he said, "Well, how's it doing?" I said, "It's doing terrible. It's doing awful." He said, "Well, what is awful? How many people have seen it?" It's been out there for a week now. Probably 1 million. He said, "Do you realize that's 1 million people whose lives have been changed, who feel different about things that you had in that movie?" I swear to you, I want you to remember this day, because there will be so many things happening because of this that you cannot even conceive right now. And so God's on it. You know He's on it. You've got the evidence for the last 8 or 10 years anyway. And so trust Him. Get up off the floor. Let's go in there and sell some tickets. And we did, and then had a really good interview and went on. And when I wrote Soul of a Horse, and it became so popular so fast, and it's literally changed the lives of thousands and thousands of horses around the planet, because now we are in the internet age, and it goes everywhere. And I had a come to Hank moment when that book happened. We were really caught up in it all, and we were about to give it up and go try to self-publish it when just bam, 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 bam. We got one of the top agents in California, a friend who we had met on the tour for Benji Off the Leash, who introduced us to his agent, who took the book and said, "This is great. I love it. I want it. I want to go out with it right now." And he was one of the top guys in town. So and I say, as I go back and look and think about that meeting I had with Hank, and so you're going to be surprised. But he found me a new passion, and he knew that if that Benji movie was successful, I'd be right back there trying to do another one probably.
All right.
And it's time to make a change and make a difference in some other lives. And I was just blown away. I said, I'm hanging me on the hook from now on. It's all up to you.
We're talking with Joe Camp, author of God Only Knows. Can you trust him with the secret? He's the author of the national bestseller, The Soul of a Heart, Life Lessons from the Herd, and the creator of the beloved Benji. This is a story that has a lot of twists and turns, a lot of failures, a lot of rejection. But when acceptance came, it seemed like easy street, one success after another, until what Joe believed was going to be his best yet turned out to be his worst. But God had a message and a messenger, and in that message and in that messenger, a calendar was marked, a date and a time stamp on when life was going to change. And what changed was God ordained. And when Joe grabbed a hold of what God was grabbing a hold of for him, he realized the impact that he was having, even on one life, let alone millions of lives. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the next chapter in Joe's life and how that watershed moment, that realization that everything he was doing was impacting lives, brought him to the point where he could see God was real, God had a plan, and God was directing his path into a new direction that was going to impact even more and be even more satisfying, more rewarding. And Joe learned the valuable lesson that you can trust God with your secret, and that God has trusted you with his. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and my special featured guests twice per month with Rabbi Zev Parat and Carl Gallups, and monthly with Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Timothy Jennings, Dr. Mark Baker, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Drs. Michelle and Mark Sherwood, Dr. Kim Moss, Derek Gilbert, Peter Rosenberger, Brandon Gallups, Steve Fair, Stephen Black, and Sean Tabbitt for in-depth insights into Israel, prophecy, the unseen realm, the brain, spiritual warfare, overcoming shame, mysteries of the Bible, prophetic insights, the sensational and the supernatural, caregiving, addiction recovery, understanding the divided heart, same-sex attraction, and much more. We're proud to feature some of the greatest biblical minds from both Israel and around the United States. Check out our featured guest lineup and 24/7 feed on ignitinganation.com or watch by topic on any device with our free apps. If you can't find what you need, you're just not looking in the right place. Follow us on social media and download our free apps today.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and Israel's #1 rated guide, Edo Canaan, for our annual Israel trip. Our 2022 trip is now open for registration for our 18th trip to Israel. Our trip will take us from Tel Aviv to the Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. You will walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible turn from black and white to living color. Visit ignitinganation.com/events and download the registration form today. No, it's not too early to take advantage of our payment plan designed to fit any budget. All of our trips sell out, and we want you to experience this life-changing journey. Registration is now open for April 2nd to 13th, 2022, and we promise you, you will never read your Bible the same way again. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Joe Camp, author of God Only Knows. Can you trust him with the secret? Joe, welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth.
Thank you.
Joe, we left off talking about Benji off the leash. To quote a story, it said, the film gathered more critical raves than all the other Benji movies put together, plus exit polls reporting that 97% of all age groups recommended it. But despite promotion and exposure that would be the envy of any movie marketing effort, Joe Camp's new film, Benji Off the Leash, was smothered at the box office by the likes of The Exodus 2 and Without a Paddle. It was overlooked by the same audience that was crying for more family-friendly fare. Or was it? Joe says, my faith was being tested and I was coming up in the red. This was personal. It was more than just work and effort. We had turned down money from Hollywood studios just to keep it safe for all members of the family, to keep out the innuendo, the four-letter words, and the violence. We were certain that's what parents wanted. I started writing, Joe says, call it diversion, call it therapy, spill it out into a computer, capture the pain in print, maybe it'll add perspective, maybe seeing it, reading it will enlighten. And the result was this book, God Only Knows. When you wrote God Only Knows, you came face to face with the mortality of success. Success is fleeting. There are careers that have spanned a year and careers that have spanned hundreds of years. But this was not a journey about Benji. This was a journey about Joe Camp. When you began to write God Only Knows, was it becoming more aware to you that this was an unfolding of God's plan for your life and that He wanted to play a more preeminent role in that life and that He was the one who was going to direct your paths for the future?
Yeah, unquestionably, but the way it happened was the book that wasn't the original title of it, and the book was being written kind of along as I did other things, because I felt like it was a story just from a pure, you want to be a success. God puts that passion into your heart and He will use it to make your life extraordinary if you will let it, if you don't give up, if you don't quit. Because when you quit, then it's over. But if you don't quit, if you stick with God and the direction that He takes you, make the turns that He makes you take, then it is going to be the success that Benji was. And there's an old saying that says that there is no such thing as failure. It's winning and learning. And that's what God is doing to you all the time. He says numerous times in the Bible that He wants a good life, a full life for you. And He will give that to you. I don't know if you know Lee Domingue, but he says it's a God-sized dream when it seems impossible, unreasonable, and it's too expensive. And unfortunately, every one of my dreams has fit that mold. So I've had a lot of God-sized dreams that have been given to me, led me through. And so as this book was being written, I was taking time writing it. I was also seeing, wait a minute, there's duplication in all of this. There's things happening here and here and here and here that I didn't want to happen, but they did, and I kept going. I didn't quit, and the results are here and here and here and here. And so I don't remember now how far along I was. I was over halfway, probably less than 3/4, when it really began to become crystal clear to me that, yeah, this dream was impossible, unreasonable, and it cost a lot of money. and the reason for that is because God wants you to know that you can't do it alone. You've got to have Him helping you to do it, because that's where it ceases to be impossible, unreasonable, and where if it takes, if it's too expensive, you figure it out with Him and the things that He provides for you. And that's what happened to us all the way. And I said, no, what? So finally, I said, I kept moving with the book, and somewhere around the time of Benji off the leash and what it turned into with the horses, it was kind of, I pulled away for a while and doing stuff with the horses and just proving once again that the very, very same happened with Benji were happening with the soul of a horse, and the same ending was happening with the soul of a horse, and lives were being changed. And I said, this is, I got to get all this stuff together. So I took time enough to really start figuring it out and how the pieces fit together. And I have loved God, talked to God over and over and over and over and over for all the way back to around the time that we walked out of Jerry Van Dyke's hotel room, and yet probably never fully trusted. Just to say, here, you got it. I'm done. Call me when you need me. And that's what it made a big move from California to Middle Tennessee, that you see behind you. And there were a lot of reasons for wanting to make this move, but there were a lot of, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. We got horses to move and all this kind of thing. And I'm a worrier, higher than a worrier. So God's not why it's crazy. My first wife died of sudden cardiac arrest in 1997. And God provided me with a very expensive route to the second wonderful, beautiful, smart, caring person in my life, forcing me into a litigation in California over Benji rights that cost virtually our entire retirement. But in that, I met a lawyer who's now my wife. And she is blessing that we have. Very, very fortunate to live this life. It's two. Being able to have.
Joe, part of the impact of Benji was, excuse me, was that the American Humane Society reported that the original Benji rescue from a shelter caused more than 1 million adoptions, and that model continued as a positive impact in that. Now you've moved into the horse arena, And I think that there's becoming much more awareness of horses and the plight of horses and the role of horses, therapy horses. There are more programs for autistic children than there have ever been before using horse therapy. You have been on the maybe not so willing or driven or focused end of social change and having a positive impact on society through your creative abilities. But nevertheless, one of the ways God has used you in an incredible way is to bring about an awareness to animal shelters and bringing about an awareness to horses and to the plight of horses and to the role of horses and to the soul of a horse and to how there is a bond and a connection that can be made and the impact it has in so many lives. As you sit back now, many years later, looking at your works, looking at the culmination of the journey that you're on, what words of advice and counsel do you have to that 8-year-old, to that 16-year-old, to that 25-year-old applying to UCLA, wanting to get into the film industry and chase after a dream? In what order would you tell them they should do it? Where should God be in that? Where should their personal desire be in that? And how should they handle rejection? Because the hidden mystery of rejection is what God will do, like he did with Joseph. In Joseph's rejection, he did the miraculous. He redeemed 71 Jewish people and created a nation called Israel today out of the ashes of what would have been an extinct race of people. To bring about our Messiah and to bring about the homeland of the Jewish people. No one could see that in the wreckage of Joseph's life as it was unfolding. So now you have the luxury of hindsight, and you have the luxury of wisdom and the luxury of age to be able to impart to our audience some words of advice and counsel that you can leave them with as we begin to wrap up this show.
I think the first thing that I've always got to say is to remember, please. I was 8 years old. I thought I knew what I do with my life, and I was 34 before I was doing it. This is never, your best dream, your most passionate dream is never going to be overnight. It's never going to be wake up the next day and you got what you had. Because God wants you to do it in the best way possible, in a way that will make the most difference possible and change as many lives as possible. And that's going to take time. And you won't always know. You won't always know where you're supposed to go next. So you got to get on board sooner than I did with God and knowing that he is directing this thing and asking point blank, why, where do I go now? What am I doing? Because he put that passion, that dream in your heart, as he did in mine. And it lasted for that, whatever 18, 34 years, to keep me going straight towards the goal. With everything that I did, I was still going straight towards that goal and doing with the same passion that I was always doing. And the only way you can destroy that, the only way you can have that not work is to quit. Do not ever quit. There's no story about the Aborigine in Australia that the rainmakers, many of them, and the planters depend on them when the droughts come. And this one guy heard about this group, this tribe, that was 100% for making rain. And so he went out to find the guy. He wanted to know how he did that. And he found the tribe and got an audience with the king and went in there. And he said, I hear that you are, you're batting 1,000 with making rain, that you never fail. He said, that's true. How do you do that? How in the world do you do that? And the guy looked at him, smiled, said, we don't quit until it rains. And I think that's one of the great, great stories. And commit to your God that you won't quit until it rains.
Amen.
See what?
Amen. Words of wisdom from Joe Camp, author of God Only Knows. Can you trust him with the secret? The answer is a resounding yes. The secret was implanted by him first, and led you believe all along it was your secret. And so we serve the God of wonder, and we have just had the honor of talking with the creator of Benji and the author of Soul of a Horse, Life Lessons from the Herd, and great wisdom from someone that's traveled the course of success, has known disappointment and failure, but has returned to the God of his youth and to the word of the Lord that stands forever, and has learned the lessons. The flowers will fade, but the word of the Lord will stand forever. Joe Camp, God Only Knows. Can you trust him with the secret? We thank you, Joe, for sharing this with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here and to have the conversation.
God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.